Derby County won promotion at the second attempt last season under Paul Warne after a 7th place finish in his first full season in charge, taking over in October that season. The Rams were very efficient. They were a strong counter-attacking side and they were brilliantly organised, with Aaron Cashin and Curtis Nelson forming an excellent pairing at the back while they had quick, strong runners going forward. But it's a step up for the Rams, who have had to rebuild in quite a short space of time to become a championship-ready club under an owner that's saved the club a little bit reluctantly, perhaps. And can the club... are they an underdog, I suppose, is the big question, because Derby County we've always spoken about as being, or historically spoken about, being one of the front runners for promotion in the Championship, certainly from the mid-2010s to maybe the late 2010s. And they've always been one of the favourites, the more fancied sides. That changed a little bit in the 2020s, prior to relegation in 2022. So, having been promoted, is it just about survival for this season? And can we class them as an underdog? That's what we're going to discuss on this Summer Deep Dive. Yes, welcome along to the latest EFL Debate Summer Deep Dive, one of 72 we're doing across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. The full set for League Two uploaded to YouTube and to Spotify, as well as a few for League One. So feel free to get yourself subscribed. Once you're done with this episode, of course, for now, I'm delighted to be joined by Jack Bryan from the Rams Review podcast, who you can follow on Twitter at JBryanFootball. Jack, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate you joining me this afternoon. Can we class Derby County as an underdog in the Championship?
I would say they probably are. If you take the history out of it, you've got to take this is Derby County sort of big club brand factor out of it, as has been the case in League One, to be fair. If you look at the budget, where the club have been in the last couple of years, where they are now, I would say underdog probably. I mean, you know, we recorded on Monday. It's Friday now, isn't it? So start this week, as players went back to pre-season training, and the conversation we had was very much, well, you know, they should take 21st. That should be the target. And in that respect, going into a season with that mentality is a stark contrast to, as you were saying, what we saw in maybe the second half of the 2010s, and the sort of expectations that, if anything, were maybe too high, maybe they were unrealistic, and that kind of contributed a bit to the demise, the mess, the eventual administration, and so on. This is a new era for the club now, where they've reset, they want to rebuild, continue to rebuild, and do it sustainably. I mean, I talked about the final day of last season and everyone rushing onto the pitch at full time in relief more than anything, frankly, as a bit like when you release the steam from a pressure cooker, in terms of that moment where everything just rushes out. It kind of was cathartic and wrote all the wrong of the last few years out of the picture. Derby are back where they were to an extent, back in the Championship, and back there for the first time in a while on a financially stable footing. And that's where they find themselves this summer. But it is, while stable, it's going to be a relatively modest budget compared to certainly what we'd have seen under Mel Morris, because, again, sustainability is the key.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly under David Klaus, who I think I felt like in 2022 he took over the club because he felt he had to, rather than because he necessarily really wanted to. And I just wonder what's his How has his relationship with Derby County as an owner evolved, do you think, over the last couple of years, Jack? Do you think he's now in a position where he really wants to try and build something with the club and he wants to carry on as owner in the long term? Or do you feel like it's still a case of him steadying the ship and he might sell the club with the club in the Championship?
So we got a very good idea of this in an interview we did with BBC Radio Derby at the start of this week. Well, at the start of this week, I think it was done end of last week, where they were talking about potential need for investment. To which he said, if the right opportunity for investment comes along, of course we're not going to turn it down. But he did also stress the importance of, in his mind, having somebody local connected with the club on that level that remains part of the setup, even when you bring in some foreign investment potentially. So I think we're at a point now where, yes, investment, if it's right, may well come in, but you kind of got the impression from that he doesn't want to step back completely. I think he probably, we'd be talking about him selling a stake rather than 100%, and sort of keeping a role as a custodian, as he's kind of seen himself, in some form. And with that in mind as well, I think that they will be very cautious in accepting investment to make sure that the person that would potentially come in is in it for the right reasons and it's right for the club long term, because of obviously everything we've seen over the last few years. But I think that sense of responsibility as a custodian is certainly still there, because I think that was the factor. He was reluctant in taking over, but he initially wanted to do what he could to help, which was buy the stadium, facilitate that, to get a different takeover over the line, with issues with that potential owner buying the stadium. But yeah, it got to a point where they knew that it was the only way it was going to happen. At that point, he somewhat reluctantly swooped in and saved the club. And I think that's the backdrop that we still see to his ownership to an extent. I think that role as kind of custodian of a cultural asset, a massive asset to the city, is his approach really, and his outlook when it comes to ownership of a football club.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Where are we with the club on a structural level then, Jack? Do you feel like there's some healing that's been done over the last couple of years? Do you think that the club's in a better position from I suppose youth, from an academy, facilities? How's that all coming together at the moment, do you think?
So obviously, training ground at Moor Farm was already seen as quite advanced for even Championship level, let alone when they were in League One.
Yeah.
But what has been notable in the last few weeks is what's come out about the kind of staff behind the scenes. I mean, we had the story break, a couple of weeks ago now, about Mo Bobat and one of his colleagues at England Cricket, whose name now escapes me, and they're coming in to head up a sort of sporting intelligence department, using a fair amount of AI insights and using AI and data to help improve performance. So that's obviously, I mean, it's a somewhat bold move, bringing somebody in from a different sport. They were obviously massively successful with England cricket, winning World Cups in a couple of different formats. But at the same time, the thing that I think will come to a lot of people's minds when they hear that is Sir Clive Woodward, obviously Southampton, and that sort of ill-fated spell. But as David Clough said this week, data is data. And if they can then pass that on to the right people with probably a little bit more football knowledge on the ground in management, coaching staff, recruitment team, and so on, then I think that could be really exciting. I mean, the backroom staff was as decimated as the playing squad was. Behind the scenes and sort of everyone it takes to make a football club tick. That was going to need to be rebuilt, and we're seeing that increasingly now. I mean, the new head of the medical department is a guy called Rob Price, I believe, who has left Leeds to join Derby off the
Mhm.
back of these, former England cricket staff joining Derby. So they are rebuilding that. That was going to take a while. Same thing with the academy, I think, where we're seeing some prospects.
Mhm.
But you're always going to look around, I think, and look at the players who have sold and so on to keep the club ticking
Mhm.
with that that sentiment of kind of what could have been. I mean, there's been a obviously benefit of the kind of flop weekend, as they called it, in the Premier League for the profit and sustainability rules.
Mhm.
Amari Kellyman moving on from Aston Villa to Chelsea for, it's been reported, around 19 million. Derby
Mhm.
do have a sell-on clause for that, which will be, of benefit. He was sold, Kellyman, as a 16-year-old in administration
Do you know what the
by
percentage? Jack, do you know what the percentage was?
It's most widely believed, according to the press, the local press, to be between 10 and 15%.
So you're
So
getting a couple of million off the back of
yeah,
that. One.
a couple
Okay.
of million quid, which will apparently help the transfer budget. Some of that will go into the transfer budget. David Clowes has confirmed. That might get, say, an Evo Adams over the line. Derby locked in
Mm.
talks with Cardiff for weeks. Maybe
Yeah.
they can just, you know, throw a little bit extra onto that deal, hit Cardiff's asking price, and get that done.
Mm.
Uh, Perhaps. So, that's significant. But in terms of the academy, I mean, the under 21s had a much better season last season than the year before, where they really only won a couple of games. I think they really didn't get many points at all.
Mm.
You've got the likes of Dijon Brown, who had a
Oh, he had a
very
great
good.
win at Gateshead, apparently, didn't he? Dijon Bryan.
Yeah, yeah, he was great. Um, Whether we see him get a chance in pre-season and then probably go out on loan, if we look at Derby's striker options, because you've got Jerry Yates coming in on loan, you've
Mm.
got Connor Washington still, and James Collins having signed a new deal.
Mhm.
That's already three strikers. You might get a nod. I think he'd have to have a good pre-season. We may well see him go out on loan.
Mhm.
Similar for Northern Irish midfielder Darren Robinson, I imagine.
Mm.
Although again, good pre-season, and perhaps he gets a shout because at the moment the midfield options are only him, Liam Thompson, and Tyrese Forner.
Mm.
Unless you want to play Ben Osborne in there, who signed last week as a
Mm.
bit of a coup really. But whether
Yeah.
he'll play in midfield or as the left wing back,
Mm.
I mean, I'm sure Paul Warne has a plan for that, but
Mhm.
I think for us to read into it, we'll have to see who else comes in, because at the moment there is, that midfield is still threadbare. Corey Smith, Conor Hurahan left on free transfers. Max Bird's loan back from Bristol City expired, and Evo Adams' loan from Cardiff expired.
Mm.
So really, it is a complete midfield rebuild. So we'll have to see where Ben Osborne fits into that one. But yeah, I think the club is coming into a better state. Matt Hale has been in charge of the academy for a year now. We're starting to see more results there, more alignment, um, and yeah, there are some exciting youngsters coming through. I think Brown, the pick of the bunch based on last season. So you know let's hope that that can kind of continue and Derby's Academy can get back to where it was. We know the owners are committed to keeping the Category 1 status,
Mhm.
which is, something David Clowes laid out from day one.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, hopefully it's a path. There's a pathway, and either contribute some valuable players to the first team, and or is a revenue stream, and they
Mhm.
can get some youngsters come through who they can sell on for good money. Because that will be, I think, especially without external investment, that would be a key and kind of obvious way to raise capital, really.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm sure we'll come on to the squad in more detail, Jack, but I wanted to ask you about Paul Warne, really. Did manage to, a bit of a ropey start to last season. A few people were asking questions after the loss at Stevenage in November. What do you think changed from that point? And what do you think he got right that allowed you to get over the line?
See, I think it was, he, David Klaus said it this week. He's someone who's always had a slightly slower start. I mean, that Stevenage game was really a bit of a reckoning in terms of the confrontation between then captain Conor Hourihane and some fans in the away end as well. Um, from there, there was then the draw at Crewe Alexandra in the FA Cup as well,
Mhm.
which prompted a replay at Pride Park, which Derby lost in the first round. So there was a couple of really poor results around that time, and I think something just clicked. I think the other key factor was we saw returns around that time of Kane Wilson, Joe Ward,
Mhm.
who, had been injured. They got injured very early on in the season as new signings. So we started to see that bit more balance with a natural right wing back in the side.
Mhm.
As well as Ryan Nyambi has done, uh, he's a more defensive minded. He's more of a right fullback really, and you'd see him in a back four or his role this season. I see him more likely playing on the right of a back three than I could at
Mhm.
wing back. So I think that added width definitely helped. But the balance, they just started to get the balance right and kind of ticked along. And then, the key factor was Ibu Adams at the end of January coming in. I mean, if Derby had had him all season, I think an awful lot of people within Derby and probably outside as well feel that Derby may well have won the league with
Mhm.
the way he transformed that side, uh, not just in terms of results, but the way they were playing. Um, that bit more confidence about them with that energy.
Yeah.
One of those key words for Paul Warne, isn't it? We hear time and time again: energy, athleticism. You know, he wants his players to be athletes.
Mm.
Is something he said in his very first press conference. Um, but yeah, I
Jack,
think that was
can
then.
I just ask that about that? Can we just explore that? Because Paul Warne says that he wants his players to be athletes, and yet if you look at the profile of players that he signs, he does tend to go for sort of late 20s players or sometimes even 30s. So would it make more sense to go for maybe a younger recruitment strategy, especially given you've not exactly got an academy that's in the healthiest position because of what's gone under the previous ownership regime?
Yeah, especially if there's a, a decent budget there. David Klaus has called it a competitive budget for the championship, but you would think long term you'd get more bang for your buck, right?
Mm.
Um, if you look at the signings who've come in so far, I mean, James Collins signing a new deal. He's now 33.
Mhm.
Yates 27. Caden Jackson is 29, as is Ben Osborne, I believe.
Mhm.
So you look at that age profile, and it's slightly contradictory because Paul Warne has spoken about getting the age profile of this squad down,
Mhm.
which, to be fair, with these signings compared to who's left, he has
Yeah,
already,
sure.
because you had your Conor Hourihans, your Corey Smiths, your Martin Waghorns, who were mid 30s. Um, but yeah, for that kind of athlete profile, I would have thought that yeah, some more slightly younger options might be preferable. But then Paul Warne, historically, you know, he's not necessarily the first to pick a pathway to an academy player or someone, is he?
Yeah.
So
No.
again, maybe we're seeing that. I mean, you thought in League One it was a case of kind of short-term signings, get out of the division, get known quality now, players who are dropping down, and try and get out. Now, I think we'll see some building for the longer term. I think we will see some younger players come in as part of it. But the signings so far are certainly still in the kind of back end of that prime age bracket um, at best, who will probably be still be that in that kind of form and kind of some semblance of peak for a couple of years. But if you had, say, you were signing a lot of Liam Thompsons, a lot of energetic young players,
Sure.
that would, again, I agree, that would kind of fit the profile more. Because he said it from day one, and I think that's what we're going to see with this midfield rebuild in terms of the sorts of players he's going to sign. I remember him saying, Paul Warne, after Derby won away at Charlton at the start of February, that for the first time that felt like his team. And incidentally, that was Edu Adams' debut. So, I think that was for the first time he had those legs in the midfield, that bit more tenacity, that bit more bite. And that's what we're going to see this summer. But yeah, certainly throw a few more young players in there, a few more players like, say, Kane Wilson, who had a bit of a point to prove when coming in after a disappointing year at Bristol City. And, by the end of the season, I think he got better as the year had gone on and impressed people in the end. And to get a few more of those in, as well as some experienced heads, is certainly something they should go for, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think. Do you think then, Jack, with Kane Wilson looking so strong as a wing back, Ben Osborne can obviously play left wing back. Do you think we're looking at 3-5-2 possibly, based on the number of strikers that you've got?
Potentially, I imagine it'll be a three at the back. Paul Warne would prefer a three at the back. Whether it'll be a kind of 3-5-2 or sort of 3-4-2-1, 3-4-3, as we saw at the back end of last season, with, say, Mendes Lang and somebody else off one starting striker, is the other possibility. But it'll be some semblance of a front three, I think, whether that's a number 10 in a 3-5-2, joining those two strikers, and able to kind of float anywhere in that final third, or two behind one striker, I think that's, I mean, looking at the numbers at the moment, as you say, there's 4 strikers on the squad list already, and this is a Derby team with, let me do the maths live. This is a bad idea. You got 7, 10. You got 22 players in that squad now already, provided I can count based on the graphic. But that does include.
I'm going to trust you, Jack.
Yeah, that does include a couple of youngsters. So Darren Robinson's in there, Brown is in there, Jake Rooney's in there. Be interesting to see what role he plays this year, coming back from his ACL injury. I mean, in the end, unfortunately, the thing that he'll probably be most remembered for last season is playing Wonderwall on his guitar in the celebration. Because the poor lad, he got injured just a few days into the season away at Bolton in the start of September, didn't he? But yeah, so I think when you look at the fact that there's more strikers than there is players in any other position, you would think that lends itself to a 2-striker system, unless we are perhaps going to see the departure of a Conor Washington, as well as maybe Brown goes out on loan. Then you've got Yates and Collins. And you maybe have one more striker come in, and you're playing 2 off them, be it like Taylor Barkhausen, Jackson, Mendes Lang. So it'll be some semblance of a front three, I think, be it 1 or 2 kind of number 9s. So yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd say that maybe hints towards a plan for a back 4, although I think this will be a backup plan, is the news we got yesterday of Ryan Niambi signing a new deal until 2027. So
Yeah.
he was an emergency signing actually in September due to that right back, right wing back sort of injury crisis. Rooney, Ward, Wilson all went down for a couple of months. But he's somebody who, very defensively solid, 7 out of 10 every week. He's definitely Derby's best right back option.
Mhm.
I don't know. It doesn't seem to be as useful going forward as that kind of right wing back. As I said, I think we'd sooner see him on the right of the back three, but he would then be the first choice in a four, I think, to be that solid option. But I think that's something up Paul Warren's sleeve. But his preferred option will, based on not just his time at Derby, but probably even more so his time at Rotherham, will be some semblance of a 3-5-2 or similar.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting to see how that comes together. Because again, you've got Connor Washington there, although he may be offloaded. You've got James Collins, who scored 14 goals in League One last season. Not exactly prolific, but he definitely had a better season than the year before. Caden Jackson, who can play up top, although he could play as a wing back or wide in a front three. And you've got Jerry Yates. So, I mean, right now that's 4 strikers. So I don't know. I mean, if Connor Washington stays, that would point it towards 2 up top. But
Yeah.
then that would kind of make you think what's going to happen to Corey Blackett-Taylor and things like that. But I suppose if Connor Washington goes, then there's maybe a world where Caden Jackson actually plays wide in the front three, and maybe Corey Blackett-Taylor comes into that, and it's Collins or Yates down the middle.
Yes, I think they're probably the sorts of players in that list who could lead that line on their own, kind of press from the front, have that bit of energy. Even with Collins at 33, he's a hard worker. Even when he's having a spell where he's not exactly prolific. Because I think Mendes Lang will have a starting berth most likely still based on last season. But he, for the brilliant season he had, I think he got 16 assists but only 9 goals. So the goals have got to come from most likely other areas of the forward line. I mean, the only reason I say could Connor Washington be on his way out is if we look at 4 strikers plus young Brown as well, DeJean Brown, then that's already a lot, and there is not necessarily an option there that guarantees you goals. So there is maybe a little bit of expectation for somebody else, maybe a loan to come in from the Premier League as the window progresses. We know Derby have said they're going to focus a significant chunk on good young loans, which does fit the kind of more athletic profile, I guess. Even if it's short term, this is about stabilising this season really for Derby, staying in that championship, not yo-yoing, and yeah, I think even short-term signings, loans, and one-year deals for someone like James Collins, being an experienced head, maybe play a little bit more of a backup role this year with someone like Jerry Yates in the mix, be able to kind of come off the bench and press from the front in those final minutes is something that again is a good thing short term. I mean, we were talking about this on the podcast the other day. Chris, one of our guys, was saying Caden Jackson perhaps looks like he'll be another one of those who, as he did at Ipswich, perhaps more often comes off the bench as that sort of player with the energy, with that kind of, again, that athletic profile, despite maybe a lack of goal contributions over the last few years. He did it successfully at Ipswich. It worked for them as a squad to have him in that role, and I can see him being there to maybe take a bit of the weight off somebody like Nathaniel Mendes Lang, who had the team on his shoulders at times in the previous League One season. So to be able to bring someone like Jackson on at the hour mark or so, and to then against tired defenders, stretch the game, make those runs. That's probably going to be his role at this moment in time, because I imagine that right hand side of a three, or is that kind of one behind the striker, it's probably where they play Mendes Lang. I think if there are two strikers, he'll be the primary player for that kind of floating 10 role. I should think, based on form. Obviously, there's been a bit of controversy and concern around him this week, because he
Yeah.
is back in training now. So we know he is back home and part of pre-season training. So that doesn't look like it will, as it stands, affect Derby's season in the way that was perhaps feared when the story broke and it wasn't clear whether he was still in Spain or not. So yeah, I think it. There's some decent forward options there. I mean, Blackett Taylor we're yet to see the best of, but he's now got a nice step up division as a permanent Derby player. Tom Barkhausen got a new deal by virtue of, I think, number of appearances. And yeah, so there's some decent forward options there. I expect a young loan or two to maybe be thrown into that mix still.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really interesting is the Cashin and Nelson partnership. I suspect works quite well in a back four, because even if you bring Ryan Yambe onto the right of a back three, you've still got the issue of Cashin's better in the middle. Curtis Nelson might be better as an outside centre back, but I think I'm right in saying he's right-footed, so you wouldn't have a left-footed player who could play on the outside of a back three who's also quick and strong in wide areas and would suit that sort of role. So again, I think that would be another reason of to play a back four, because of how good Cashin and Nelson are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only question there is what happens to a Joe Ward or Kane Wilson. But I think there's ways around that. I think Ward, we still plays at a winger at times, or a kind of wide midfielder, as he did at Peterborough. I think Kane Wilson as well has that capability. I mean, we saw towards the end of the last season a kind of 3-4-3 with the two of them interchanging. One would be in the inside channel in that kind of half space, the other on the outside, and sort of, one stays, one goes. That bit of synergy between them, that understanding, as they kind of kept those rotations going to keep the opposition guessing. So Kane Wilson could also play that a little bit further forward, but his strength has been making those driving runs, bombing forward from right back or right wing back, and that is something that will allow people. I can't speak. Sorry. Long night. I was watching a lot of the election, but I think Kane Wilson, could play further forward as well, and there's scope for that. Yeah, I mean, the only thing is on Cashin. I mean, we could see him on the left of that back three, depending on who comes in as a left footer, kind of from that space, playing that diagonal pass that we see him play so often. Although, yeah, I do think the back four would probably suit Cashin and Nelson more.
I don't think he'd fancy a left centre back spot in a back.
No, I imagine somebody would have to come in, but as it stands, he's probably the most likely option to play there, based on the fact that he often played there towards the end of last season when Sonny Bradley came in, and Bradley would occupy that central spot. So yeah, but I would hope somebody will come in. You play Cashin in the middle. It may well need to be somebody with that bit more pace on that left hand side of the three, on the basis of Cashin and Nelson not being lightning quick. But yeah, I think as it stands, he would probably be shoved out on that left if there was a back three, barring Craig Forsyth starting, who obviously great servant to Derby, but is also getting on in years.
I find it funny. It's like every I'm sure I remember saying to a Derby fan like 7 years ago that Craig Forsyth was a little bit past his best. So I'm sort of surprised he stayed it. Do you know what? I think if the financial situation at the club hadn't sort of been so jeopardous in recent years, I don't think Craig Forsyth would have stayed in because. But listen, fair play to him. He's been a fantastic professional and servant to Derby County. So every respect to him from that point of view, but I'm not sure he's quite going to be up to the level personally. Hopefully, he proves me wrong. Yeah. So Tyrese Forner, Jack, talk to me about Tyrese Forner.
Yeah, I mean, he had very limited minutes, particularly towards the end of last season. He came in on a free transfer across the A52, and there was a bit of hope that he'd add, I think, what Emu Adams added in the end in terms of that bit of energy, that bit of tenacity. It didn't really happen in what ended up being relatively limited minutes. When he started, he kind of not pull up any trees, and then he end up on the bench again. He might look good off the bench, earn himself another start, and the cycle would continue to go round. And if that was in League One, then I don't think there's all that much hope of him certainly being a starter for Derby. There have been a fair few calls I've seen in both the media and from fans that he perhaps needs to move on. Whether that's a loan or a permanent deal, I guess would depend on the the market and who wanted him. I certainly don't think he'll be a starter. I think probably neither he or Liam Thompson will be penciled in as starters at the moment with the number of midfield links that have been flying around. And I think that it's a weird one because I think he's 24 as well now, which so he's not young for somebody who has maybe failed to kind of cut through and make kind of fixed spot somewhere in first team, be it as a starter or a substitute. Yeah, he'll be 25 in September, and you do just wonder whether perhaps with 19 appearances for Derby last season um, in League One, like I just struggle to see him making anywhere near that many now, and maybe a drop down to a League One side again to try and kind of get some regular minutes would be more beneficial for him. But again, are Derby going to be willing to let him go at the moment with only a couple of midfield options?
Yeah, I think
That's
it's unlikely. Yeah, I think you've got to be realistic about where you are squad wise. So for me, I think you try and back Tyrese Forner to make that jump. Maybe not as first choice, but so I definitely think you're going to need another couple of midfielders. But yeah, I think you might need to sort of rely on him to be part of the squad for now, and hopefully he can make that step up.
yeah,
So,
I think so. I think it's one of those where maybe a bit of faith needs to be shown in him. If you get a couple of experienced heads in throughout the squad, someone who can kind of take him under their wing, then yeah, I mean he's shown it in glimpses as he did at Reading as well. I'd say there were some moments for him when he was there, but it just didn't quite happen for him last year. So yeah, now is the time. I think if it doesn't happen this season, it most likely won't happen for him at Derby, where it is a 2-year contract that he signed. So yeah, it is now or never for the lad. But I think that there's a good player in there, and he's certainly as it stands going to have to be step up and become a valuable member of the squad.
yeah.
Because as I say, a couple of midfielders look relatively close,
Mhm.
but if you if you look at the depth in that midfield,
Mm.
he's going to get a good chance to stake his claim in pre-season, certainly.
Yeah. Certainly is. So, Jack, we've already said that the expectation is survival for Derby this season. I imagine in terms of targets, you're probably going to be shooting a little bit higher than that. But let's look at how close you are to a starting 11 that you're confident can achieve your ambitions this season. I mean, what would your sort of starting 11 be if you had to pick the formation and the best 11, if you like?
Yeah, see, it's difficult at the moment. There's some positions which literally pick themselves.
Okay. Well, let's start with
I
the positions that pick themselves then.
Yeah. So it has, as it stands, it has to be Josh Vickers in goal,
Okay.
unless you're to promote someone from the under 21s. So that one's easy. I think Cashton and Nelson
Yeah.
certainly pick themselves.
Okay.
Whether what shape they are playing together in is perhaps the question. I mean, you've got Ben Osborne having come in, who some fans are calling for him to be given the armband even as a youth signing, but obviously a Derby lad, somebody who was in the academy way back when. Is he more suited to a sort of wing back role as well? That maybe points towards back three. But as it stands, you either play a Callum Elder or a Craig Forsyth on the left of that three to facilitate, or just say we'll play a back four and then Osborne will have to put a shift in at left fullback. At this stage,
I think you want to recruit especially a left back personally if you want to play a back four. I think Osborne would be
yeah,
a great wing back option, but he'll probably want
yeah,
the freedom to get up and down.
he will. He's been, some of the people that cover Sheffield United that we've spoken to spoke to Sheffield United podcast last week, and they were saying that some of his best moments were even played as a left winger for them. So he'll want to get further on. In that respect, at the moment, picking the team, I probably lean towards whether it's a 3 or a 4, you've got to throw somebody like Callum Elder in there or Craig Forsyth in there.
Yeah.
I'd probably, I'd almost be tempted to give Callum Elder a shot based on, again, he had some glimpses last season. But I think I'd go Craig Forsyth at left back at the moment, which is
Oh, you
remarkable.
really?
Just for like the first couple of pre-season games, give him a run out, get his fitness up, and see where he is, sort of
Right.
thing. I think for the first league game, I'd probably back Elder, but I think Forsyth will need minutes. We need to see where he's at still, because that was like Barkhausen was another one of those where the extension clause was triggered due to a number of appearances. I mean, really remarkable servant considering everything the club's been through, but also all the injuries he's been through, multiple ACL injuries and the like. So yeah, but I think you probably look at probably a solid 4 with Nelson, Cashin, and Elder, and then I'd say Ryan Leambi at right back. You've then got really 2 in midfield in Forner and Thompson, unless actually this is where the course by Ben Osborne in central midfield come in, which is interesting because it's a valid option. It's absolutely a valid option. It's whether you throw him in there for the time being and play say him next to Thompson, for example. Because then you can have a Blackie Taylor or someone on the left wing, or a Mendes Lang. Yeah, I'd probably go. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. I'm thinking out loud, as you can tell. If you'd asked me this a couple of hours ago, I could have planned this.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jack. Can I let me? I've kind of talking to you has helped me kind of come to a place of where I'm probably at with this. I'm thinking maybe 4-3-3 is the best formation that you've got right now, and I would go for Vickers in goal, obviously for now. Probably Ryan Nyambe at right back. I'd probably go for quite a solid back four, so I'd go for I'd definitely recruit a left back.
Yeah,
Niambe
well,
maybe.
that's it. There's going to have to be a left back in there because
Mm,
Osborne is certainly seen as a wing back who will, also potentially play in midfield. I think he'll
yeah.
play wing back in a 3/5,
Hmm.
midfield in a 4 is where I think we're at with him. So a left back is a must really,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
ideally somebody who can play left side of back three as well. But
So,
yeah,
so
I think you're right.
Yeah, so I'm thinking Niambe, new left back, Cash and Nelson as centre halves, and then what I would think is Fauna as maybe a bit of a 6, and then I would have Osborne on the left central midfield, Ebo Adams if you can get him back using the Kellyman money, maybe on the as a right-sided 8, and then what I would try and do. I'm not a legal expert on the situation with Nathaniel Mendes-Lang, so I'm not ignoring that. I just don't know enough information to sort of comment on that. But from a footballing point of view, I would probably have Nathaniel Mendes-Lang on the left, and Corey Blackett-Taylor on the right, and maybe Jerry Yates up top. So basically building around the counter-attacking strength, because I don't think Derby can bring in the quality of players required to really dictate games at championship level. So I think counter-attacking is what you've got to go for. So that would probably be how I'd approach to it,
And
but with
it's
some
something,
pressing from Adams and Osborne.
yeah, it's something Paul Warne favours as well. High energy, counter attack, press. You know, players run themselves into the ground to an extent even. You can go as far as saying. The one thing I'd say on that is Blackett Taylor has very much liked to play on that left flank.
Oh, okay.
Uh, so we may well see both at Derby and I think at Charlton previously as well. Last season he's been utilised on the left. We may well see those two the other way round. But I think that would be fluid. I think you'd see that potentially swap in game at various points in the game.
Yeah.
Yates would be my starting striker, absolutely. I think, he had a tough year at Swansea, but he got 14 championship goals in a relegated Blackpool side the year before.
Mm-hmm.
He can score in sides lacking creativity, lacking goals, and that's to be a crucial ability in the battle to survive. I mean, I think in a kind of 4-3-3, which probably be the optimal for a back four. I think that left 8 is the obvious role for Ben Osborne.
Mm-hmm.
Give him a bit of license to maybe roam wide as well,
Yeah.
as whoever is on that left hand side cuts in. And that's where, again, maybe Mendes-Lang on the left does work better because he can kind of sit in that inside, as
Yeah.
he did with a left wing back alongside him last season. But yeah, I mean, I do think Mendes-Lang had his best spells last season, played a pretty free role, but generally ending up on the left. It's just
Mm.
whether Blackett Taylor can adapt maybe to playing on the
Yeah.
other side to
That's interesting because
facilitate that.
I think the dynamics could work quite nicely, because if you then got one of Mendes-Lang or Blackett Taylor cutting inside from the left and Ben Osborne overlapping, but then the other one providing a bit more of a width type option on the right, because they're both right-footed, aren't they? Whereas Ebo
Yeah,
Adams can just go and on the counter-attacks he can attack the penalty area, and he can maybe join Jerry Yates and try and get in on the goals. So I actually think
yeah,
that what we've come to could be quite a nice
yeah.
system.
Absolutely. I think Adams has that ability to make a nuisance of himself in the box.
Yeah.
Certainly have that energy, make those crashing runs,
Yeah, it's
and
like
even if he's not,
If you're a centre half and you see Ebo Adams coming at you, you'd be quite scared. You know what I mean? So I think he could pop up with a few goals.
he could. I mean, the ideal world is that he turns into Scott McTominay in a Scotland shirt, right? Where he adds, as well as that physical presence and those crashing runs, he suddenly finds goals.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I think he will. I think he's a real presence in the box, which would then allow others around him to have that bit more space with defenders occupied by him. The other thing I'd say with that is if you could get Adams and Osborne as 2-8, the other person we may well see, according to the rumours, and people who wrote this story at AZ Alerts have had some contact with us, actually. So we've got a bit of an idea of the sort of player Guy is. Kenzo Guzman, I'm probably butchering that. Guzman? I don't know. I should have researched that. But he's potentially coming in. He spent the second half of last season on loan at Excelsior in the Netherlands from AZ Alkmaar, and he's very much that. From what I've read and what I've watched of clips, he seems to be that kind of sitting midfielder, or certainly was for the second half of last season when he was out on loan, who can drop deep and then kind of receive the ball on the turn and progress it. So
Kenzo Goodman, he was, looks like, I've just looked him up. So he was at Netherlands under-19s as recently as 2019. Yeah. So clearly he's got some good pedigree there.
There's pedigree, yeah. And I think the role, whether we could, if he comes in, I could see him being that kind of sixth as well, with then the energy of an Osborne and an Adams type player in front. That certainly would be a nice option for Derby. Yeah. And it is they're going to need to balance the energy that Paul Warne will want, the tenacity, with that little bit of technical quality, and he seems to have that. I mean, I would love a kind of deeper, kind of technically sound midfielder. I saw one link, and I've not seen anything on it since, so I assume it's not happening. But I saw one link for Ethan Arahan from
mate, he is the one. I don't know if you've got the money to get him, but Ethan Arahan, I've seen him play. Jake Tom, who I podcast with on Lincoln City, will kill me for saying this because he absolutely adores Ethan Arahan. But he is, like, I think if you were to buy him for 2.5 million this summer, I know that's quite a lot of money because you don't have unlimited funds. I think he could easily be worth 8 figures this time next year because he's got that bit of composure on the ball. So his decision making is really good. But also there's also moments where he can go and press the opposition as well and push forward. So he's very intelligent as well. And he can create. So I think he would be a fantastic addition. So I can definitely vouch for him.
Yeah, my dream setup would be you get Adams in alongside Osborne and somebody in that Arahan profile to complete the trio. I mean, the other thing that got me very excited when I saw that one link, which I didn't see for a few days, I somehow missed, is the Scottish factor with me being half Scottish. I don't know if you remember that.
Who's half Scottish?
Me, I'm half Scottish.
Oh, you are
Scotland
half Scottish, right? Okay.
So there's a little bit of me that get excited about that. Arahan was actually in a Scotland side I had a football manager that I managed to win the Euros with. There's that personal connection. I did write something for a Lincoln City website, a blog, and they were asking me when Derby played them second half of last season, who would I take? And he was the obvious choice. I think to have somebody in that profile with with those abilities is, would be a big asset. And then, I think to get that kind of deeper midfielder, Evo Adams as well in there, and then a specialist left back and a left centre back option would be good. I mean, the other slightly rogue shout, the other question, I think would then become, what does happen with Kane Wilson in terms of, I think you want a solid back four as a newly promoted side, and that's why Ryan Niambi's got a new contract. I mean, that's, they're going to need that solidity. Wilson wouldn't have the same license get up the pitch. Could he play in that right wing role as the kind of wide winger? Perhaps
not in a 4-3-3. In a 4-2-3-1, maybe if you've got a goal scoring 10, but not in a 4-3-3. I don't think.
I wouldn't think so. But could they try him there? I could kind of see that happening in pre-season, or even, I mean, the other position we saw him in a couple of games in the what is now the Bristol Street Motors Trophy, isn't it? Was in central midfield on the right of the midfield three, which is somewhere he played in the West Brom Academy as well. So I think that would probably be more probable. But again, I think he would be somebody who is there to be a wing back in a 3/5. Joe Ward, if either of them, would probably be more likely to be stuck on that right wing, I think. But I do think solidity at the back will have to be prioritised. So it will be probably Nyambe, Nelson, Cashin, and whoever Derby can bring in. But I think really the key thing with the transfer strategy from here is if they could get a goal, they need a good first choice goalkeeper to come in, replace Joe Wildsmith. They need another good defender, left back / left centre back, depending on the favourite system. And then midfield, I mean, Evo Adams would be great. A deeper midfielder would be great. But, in Ben Osborne, they've already got someone who's a bit of a two. If they could get a defender, a goalkeeper, and a forward that all kind of, I mean, this is dreamland, la la land, really, for them, is sort of to have somebody to the level of Ben Osborne as a signing in goal, defence, and up front, you suddenly have a very solid spine. And I mean, the goalkeeper links have been remarkable, really. There's been links to both another AZ player, actually, in Matthew Ryan, the Australia international.
Oh, yeah.
And also to Marek Rodak, who was, of course, the starting goalkeeper for Fulham.
Warney knows him from Rotherham, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. Which could mean that it's relatively probable to happen compared to someone like Matt Ryan, because there's that bit of extra connection.
Equally, with Brighton goalkeeper in the Premier League, wasn't he, Matty Ryan?
Yeah, he was Brighton goalkeeper after being at Valencia. He spent half a season on loan at Arsenal as well. Only played 3 games as backup. He ended up going to Copenhagen and then found himself at AZ Alkmaar, and he was actually got the second most clean sheets in the Eredivisie last year. So, I mean, that would be a ridiculous signing, really.
Is that even realistic for Derby County in their current... It's not like you're loaded with loads of money. So how...
From what I've been told, there is potential, because it's looking at either Derby or potentially a move somewhere like the MLS. So it would depend on what he was kind of prioritising, I think. If you want to stay relatively, closer to where he's been based for the last few years, go back to England perhaps, where he was, settled for a fair few years, then perhaps. But I would say those two have been linked, as has Daniel Iverson, is it? Iverson?
Oh, yes. He used to be at Oldham, I think, Daniel Iverson, as Rotherham, I think, as well. So Warren probably knows. Yeah,
I feel like Ryan is the rogue shout, the one that I would not expect. I would love if they could get him. I think he'd be really impressive. Someone who's played at 3 World Cups would be great experience for a newly promoted Championship side. But I feel like Rodak would be probably the more realistic best case scenario, and Iverson as well would be another solid shout. Do you know what? I'm going to have to go away after this and look through left backs and left centre backs and see if we can find any overlap. If there was someone who could be kind of defensively solid and cover both.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because I think what would work, if you're wanting to be clever about your recruitment, I think, like you've pointed out, a left centre-back who could also be, a solid left-back who could also cover left centre-back, I think would be a great addition, because if we want to make an easy transition from a back 4 to a back 3, which you might want to do at times to fit in Kane Wilson at right wing-back, then you got Nyambe from right back to right centre back. You've got Cashin from left centre back to middle centre back. You've got your left back coming into left centre back, and then you got Ben Osborne coming in from midfield to left wing back. So it'd just take one switch, it'd be a very smooth switch in order to go from a back 4 to a back 4. So I think that could be something to recruit for.
Yeah, I think that will be a key position now. I think obviously goalkeeper, Evo Adams, midfield, and that left back, left centre back role. that should be quite high on Paul Vaughan's list. I mean, obviously, another kind of left wing back option departed officially at the start of the week in Louis Sibley.
Yeah.
He wants to play. I mean, there was quite a telling quote actually. I put it out where Sibley had said basically that he wants to play in midfield, and that was part of it. So, I wonder as well whether part of that could be. I mean, we're told local radio reported yesterday he was offered terms less than his previous contract, which probably part of the reason he went to Oxford as well. But in terms of his role, would have been reduced anyway, I imagine, with what we're talking about here, potentially going to a back four. And I did see a mention of that potentially being a good idea from the excellent Derby County writer for the Derby Telegraph, Lee Curtis, as well, when Niambi signed his new contract yesterday. I think Derby need to plan for both. I think they need to have both up their sleeves to be able to make that switch in game when needed, but also, starting games, depending on the opponent, depending on various factors, they need to, I mean, that should be a fairly basic requirement to have somebody who can facilitate that switch. And the question would be, we know the left back market is a relatively scarce one, certainly at the top level. And to what extent does that trickle down to, say, the Championship? Does that mean there's perhaps less high quality left backs available on loan because clubs give youngsters a chance, aren't able to find someone they're willing to pay £50 million for in the Premier League and the like? But yeah, that would be a key position now. I think, that's something we need to be profiling really, because as it stands, you've got realistically Callum Elder and Craig Forsyth, or you're continuing to stick Cashin on the left of the three to bring Sonny Bradley in probably. I mean, the only other the other interesting player who I think will probably be a backup is Jake Rooney. Actually, with Derby, and he couldn't play left back. He can play centre back, right back, or in kind of holding midfield. And based on his form at the start of last season, if he'd have stayed fit, I think he'd have had a run, and there'd be no question about him making a step up as part of the squad. Whether we see him loaned out now, coming back from an ACL injury, or whether he gets a bit like Tyrese Fornick, which he's thrown in as a useful squad member, able to cover a few positions as well, as I say. But yeah, I mean, he could be in a back three with his kind of ball playing ability, that ability to step up into those kind of deep midfield roles in possession as an option, or even play that holding midfield role, that sixth role, and drop in to form a three. There's options with people like him, but yeah, left back is the one where I do struggle at the moment. I don't quite see who that's going to be. I mean, I can't think Craig Forsyth's going to start. If he was going to start every week, I imagine there would have been a little bit more fanfare around him re-signing, getting a contract extension. It was very much in the retained list announcement. Matter of fact, has been given a 1-year extension because of playing a certain number of league games, as was Tom Barkhausen, both of which kind of suggested to me they're not at the very top of the manager's list to give new contracts to. But we're going to be transparent about that. So yeah, but I think yeah, there's certainly scope, and there have been some really interesting links. I just think it is going to be over the next 5 weeks? Is it 5 weeks today?
It starts on the 10th of August, and what we know there's
it would be, wouldn't it?
Days. It's about 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, well, I think it starts on the Friday. Derby play on the Friday night, which I think is the 9th. And on that basis, yeah, it must be 5 weeks because July has 31 days. We're on the 5th at the moment. Yeah, got to be 5 weeks. There we go. 5 weeks to start the season. More live bad maths from me. This is added a lot of value to the stream. I'm sure, but that's something they've got to nail down in the next few weeks. I would think the recruitment department with the new additions in there as well will be pouring over
It
hordes
looks
of
like a big
options.
area. It looks like a big area to address, doesn't it? Jack, 3 more questions from me. First one being, what's the biggest reason to believe Derby County will meet their ambitions this season?
I think the general atmosphere in the squad, the way, as they did last season, they all kind of pull together and work to kind of 110% for the team. Paul Warne managed to create, towards the end of the season, what was a very well-oiled machine, all pulling in the same direction. I think that's one of his biggest strengths as a coach. Of course, he's not managed to avoid relegation in the Championship before. This time, despite Derby's budget not being massive, the general feeling is that it will surely be bigger than anything he ever had to work with at Rotherham.
Sure.
So, it's a better position for him. We shouldn't write him off based on his previous record if he's going to have a lot more to work with. But I think that's the biggest strength I can see in this side at the moment, as well as if they can get a left back in, there's some really solid defensive foundations there in Cashin, Nelson, Ryan Niambi, which, I could see an awful lot of low-scoring games ground out throughout the season as, again, that squad pulls together as one. And I think that's what makes me think they can certainly stay up. They're probably aiming a little bit higher in terms of kind of lower mid-table. I think it's probably they're aiming. I doubt they're saying 21st will do. They're certainly not going to say that publicly anyway. But from the perspective of a fair few fans, I think a fair few would take that, given what's happened over the last few years. I know, taking my kind of journalistic hat off and putting the fan hat on, I would snap your hand off for 21st because stability is the key. And I think that togetherness, that organisation is probably the biggest strength of this team at the moment, when there's a lot of players who haven't proven themselves at Championship level before, or at least in a couple of years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Biggest reason for doubt?
Really, I think one is that gaping hole at left back at the moment. If as we've gone over, the other one I would say is probably a potential lack of goals. If James Collins hit more goals last season than he did the year before, really hard working, facilitated a lot of play in that front three for Mendes Lang to play as well as he did, and so on. But Mendes Lang didn't hit all that many goals even in League One. If Jerry Yates can find his Blackpool form that earned him a £2.5 million move, then Derby will probably be fine. If he doesn't, I struggle to see necessarily where the obvious source of goals is, and that is a risk factor. But again, if the whole team can chip in with a few goals each, and it's evenly spread, you don't necessarily need one main goal scorer who everything's coming through. But that's certainly something Derby don't have, and that will be an element of cause for concern at the moment.
Yeah, that makes that. I can see that definitely question marks over it in terms of firepower. Hopefully, Jerry Yates can be the answer, and Collins can have another big season. So too early for a prediction, Jack, but give me a number between 1 and 10 to denote your level of optimism for the season ahead.
Do you know what? My level of optimism is going to be skewed in the sense that I'm normally quite pessimistic anyway with predictions. You know this, but So my aim for the season is purely 21st, and the optimism I have for them getting that, based on some of the signings they've been linked with, and what I hope they could maybe get over the line, is probably about a 6.5. I
Oh,
think they've got
okay.
a
I was expecting you to go higher than that, actually.
maybe a 7. I'll go 7. I think
Okay.
if they can get those some of the players over the line, if Emu Adams comes back in, there's a good left back, a good goalkeeper, and a few more bodies elsewhere, then I'd be optimistic. But I don't want to overshoot it at this point. If they get those players in, then it probably goes higher. But at the moment, I'm thinking it could all fall apart. Paul Warren could be rejected by his top 3 targets in each position, and Derby are left scrambling in the bargain basement on the eve of the season. Don't count your chickens just yet. Would be my word of caution. But I think it's an exciting season to come with various content. I mean, with the podcast, hopefully
Yeah,
doing more again on the women's team side as well.
brilliant.
That's kind of my part of my side of it. With building that, the women's team are stronger, getting stronger every year, and then in general, kind of optimism for the season. This is me going in September to the first year of University of Derby's football journalism degree. So loads of content to come from me as well, starting with England tomorrow night, which I am less optimistic about, let's just say. but yeah.
Yeah, hopefully the change to the back 3 works with Saka at left wing back and that have
Yeah,
yeah, but that's a different podcast.
that is.
Yeah. Listen, Jack, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. Really appreciate your insight on Derby County. Thanks to you for watching at home. You can subscribe to Rams TV or Rams Review even. What am I on about? Getting my Rams content providers mixed up. You can subscribe to Rams Review. There we go. And follow Jack Bryan at jbryanfootball on Twitter. You can also subscribe to EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify. Drop us a comment if you've watched on YouTube to let me know how you think Derby are going to get on this season. If you've enjoyed this episode too on Spotify, leave us a review because that would help a lot. And we'll see you again with another summer deep dive on EFL Debate very, very soon.